One house, three strategies. How do you know which strategy to choose on one property? We're talking renovation, zoning changes, subdivisions, everything you want to know to maximize profits as a property investor. Starting with data analyst and founder of Suburbs Finder, Gilbert Melgar.
So this one is on a heritage overlay. On the left, this is what the current layout looks like. And on the right, this is what we're doing.
Next up, property developer and founder of the Property Developer Network, Flux.
We've got three different ways that we can actually get this across the line. Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. We can have a planning application in 10 business days.
Then founder of Inside 2 Buyers Agency and property investor with a massive $14 million portfolio, Oliver Cheung.
Collaboration with local real estate is gold. We're working at a on sale price of 1.8 in current market.
It's time to unpack three strategies on this one house in Melbourne. What are you actually doing with this place?
So right there and then, the highest use to generate cash flow is...
If you've been struggling to decide what kind of property investing strategy is the best way for you to move forward, and you want to understand more of the details and the inner workings of each of them, you are going to enjoy this episode. My name is Todd Sloan. This is the Pizza and Property Podcast, and this episode is powered by InvestorKit, PDN, Suburbs Finder, Property Strats, and Inside 2. More about our amazing show sponsors in the show notes below. But right now, let's jump straight into the episode as I walk you through this very unique property in Melbourne's western suburbs. So the last time we did a one house, three strategies episode, it was on like a 3-bed, 1-bath on like 800 and something square meters. Really cool episode. I wanted to kick it up a notch for you guys this time and actually give each of our experts something a little more challenging, a little bit outside of the box. After a bit of searching, I found this 150 Durham Road in Sunshine. Now, at the time when I very first found it, it was going to auction. At the time of recording right now, it's actually still up for sale with an asking price of $1,120,000. This is a 9-bedroom. So this huge property, 9 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, obviously in a lot of need of love. Just flicking through the photos here, I was really interested. But it's a corner block, pretty close to the train station. And as you can see here, it's in Sunshine. It's like 13 Ks away from the city. So naturally, I wasn't just going to show you guys a few photos on a listing on realestate.com. Bianca, Freddie, and I actually walked through this property in person. And right now, I want to show you from the outside to the inside what this place really looks like. So straight up out the front, you can see that everything has been re-stumped. If you actually just pause it just here, you can see all these concrete stumps. These are all newer. Now, apparently the guy that owned it, I spoke to the agent, they just had everything re-stumped recently. When you look through the photos on RP data though, you can see that the state that it's in now, it wasn't in a few years ago. Apparently they had a few people squatting in there, causing some damage, kicked them out, fixed up a bit of stuff as far as like the structural side of things from what we've been told. The cosmetics, very not much fixed up at all. As you can see, this needs a ton of work on the outside. Looks like there used to be an old window rattler air conditioner units stuck out there. And you can see there looks like there's surface level cracking all through the property. But otherwise, the biggest thing that I was surprised about, if we fast forward here to actually walking through the home, I was expecting the floor to be like a trampoline. I wasn't sure if it really had all been re-stumped properly, but it felt pretty solid. The one thing that this place really did have like in droves, like the patina, that you could smell like the old wooden floorboards. And I mean, in a good way, not in a negative way, but this is a home that really has character that can absolutely be lifted out with the right kind of renovation. There's tons of old furniture in here as well. You can see this is just walking into the very first room off to the left. And I was just checking things like sash windows. Sash windows, they're quite costly to actually get repaired if they don't open, if the strings are broken. So you can see a lot of the windows just didn't open. I actually think they were more painted shut than anything, but all the ropes did feel tight. This was actually one thing that I wasn't really sure of is this hole that you can see up the top of the roof, just here. There was a lot of holes through the floors, through the walls. You can see them in the walls as well here. These weren't holes that people had like smashed in. They'd actually just drilled parts of the floor out and drilled parts of the wall out. And this was all over the property. The floors really did look like you could turn them into something special. So we're seeing a lot of cracking around the place, but none of this is really a surprise. Like when you're looking at the photos, they've actually represented it pretty honestly for what it really is. Now, walking into the next room off to the right-hand side here, you see there's a beautiful old fireplace. Again, holes through the walls, holes through the ceiling, a lot of old paneling on the walls. I'm actually really interested to hear for a lot of these rooms, comment below, what would you do to this property? Because there is so many options. This is in no way a standard house. And as you're about to find out as well, with different kinds of overlays, what kind of things you can and can't do to a property can always change when you're talking this kind of character and history. Something that I'm always doing when I'm looking for a place like through as a renovator, like peeling off anything you can peel back. Obviously you don't walk through a house and break stuff. Even when it's in this condition, it's not your house. But if the wall's like flaking off that little bit, so straight up you can look behind that and go, oh, what's actually behind here? Is it like the old horsehair plaster? Has it been gyprocked over in a renovation that happened not long ago? Is it concrete? Either way, you get a better understanding of what you're actually dealing with, opposed to ripping stuff off later and going, oh, I didn't realize it was that. This is just a side note, but like the cool old radios and stuff. There was so much cool stuff in this property. But then walking out of that room into the bathroom, there was no lights in here. I did half expect to see the doll from Saw like kind of just ride out on a little bike. Like, this is creepy. It's the only bathroom in the entire property as well. So 9 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. So there's at least one wet point in the house here because there was no kitchen, but we do have the bathroom just down here. So really, walking out of the bathroom here, what I'm looking for is all of the stuff that you really can't see in photos. We know it needs lots of work doing to it. Like, this isn't a surprise, but it's like, what level of work? Like here, this is actually perfect. So if you're completely new to renovating, how are you fixing this wall? Because this is a very old school method. This is not normal sheets of gyprock just being slapped up on the walls. We'll get to more of this later, but it's about actually really understanding that kind of stuff, the details of it, opening things that you can open up that you can't on the photos. So you can see, is there a gigantic hole under here somewhere? And I don't actually think I could get that open anyway. So I think that was locked. No, do I get it? No, yeah, no, it's locked. But we're just really getting a lay of the land here. And you can see it every time I try and pause, it goes a little bit blurry. But this is the kind of stuff that if you're at zero, you take photos, you send it to a plasterer. If there's something that you're not sure of, you go, how does this work? What kind of repairing is this? So if we keep moving through the property, we'll see, again, everything needs so much work. There's probably asbestos under the tiles in there. That's a pretty common thing in the glue. I mean, there's probably asbestos throughout the whole thing. Also, when you are walking through, especially when something's going to auction, make sure you get video and photos of all of your different docks, depending on what states you're in. Sometimes they're your R3s, your Form 1s, your Form 3s. Again, it's always going to change as to where you are, but just make sure you get it on video or take photos of it. It'll just make your life a little bit easier later on. Now, one of the rooms was locked and I actually couldn't get in there, but otherwise everything downstairs, pretty much the same. There's more of those holes again. So I turn back around and start heading upstairs. Now these stairs, these would look amazing. I'm actually really looking forward to hearing more about what Oliver Cheung's got planned for this place later on. So we go straight up the stairs and then turn left into this little, I guess it's kind of like 2 different bedrooms. This could look stunning as well. I love the ceiling. I love the fact that it's not a standard window. It leans into like that kind of attic kind of feel to it. Playing around with more holes in the floors. Now, there's not really much of a view that this is looking out on. I was hoping that you'd get a little bit of a city glimpse, but not quite with a few of the trees around here. Obviously, more patchwork. This is actually looking downstairs into the first room from above. One of the smaller bedrooms. This was actually probably the room that was most intact. But already, you're kind of walking through. You can see like a lot of what needs to be done here is super cosmetic. It obviously needs lots of patchwork. It obviously needs paint. We need to get the flooring done. A lot of money needs to be spent on this place. We need to patch all of those holes in the floors. But so far, when walking through, there's not that huge like wobbly section. Like I said, it felt so much more stable than what I thought it was going to. Fred seemed to enjoy it as well. Now this is a little bit different. This is almost like a vermiculite kind of popcorn that you normally find on the roof that's on the walls. Now again, building of this age, there's potentially asbestos through that as well. And we're seeing a ton of cracking through here, but most of the cracking actually just looks like it's surface. You always want to get that stuff structurally checked, but general sort of rule of thumb when you're checking, if you can stick your finger in it, then a lot of the time it can be a problem. There was something up with the windows here. I think that was plastic. Cool character old switch. This gives you a little bit more of a close-up of the old plasterwork, how they did it. That must have taken ages how they did that. Zooming through the rest of it, I always like to close doors as well, no matter what condition the property is in. Doors are one of those things that you think, oh, it's a door. Yeah, I'll get that fixed if it doesn't. It's just super fiddly. If you're going to DIY it, you can waste half a day just on fixing a door. But not only the super fiddly side of things, they can actually just cost a lot more than you think to actually get replaced. So if you can actually save a door, especially when it's an old character door, which not all of these are, some of them are, it's just a good thing to know for when you're working into the budget. And again, a lot more character in these ceilings up here. We've got this little lofty space up in the top bedroom here. Wasn't quite sure and was not game to actually walk out there and see how sturdy everything was. And this is now coming through the back bedroom here. This actually looks onto the backyard, so decent sized block. And you've actually got a laneway that runs just along the back of it here. which opens you up to different kinds of access as well, as far as inlets, what you can do with garages, and actually really utilizing this space a little bit better. Now, to quickly jump outside and show you guys a little bit of the exterior of this place as well. If you're looking at this street view, we're walking down the right-hand side of the block, looking towards the little laneway at the back. Again, you can see so much surface level damage all over the property. This is going to be a ton of sanding, painting, stripping everything back to actually make it look nice again. But you can see this is a big, almost 700 square meter block. I think it's 690 something square meters. We've got one tree just out the back here. This is a little lean-to that looks like it was probably built on a little while earlier. But otherwise, we've got quite a lot of space just along here. This house has actually been set forward enough that it's not built on an angle on the block. You see this a lot of the time when you think, oh, I can probably chop off that backyard, but then it's like just not quite. You can't actually get the car down the side for the clearance for a hammerhead, and they've built it that little bit too far back that you've got a huge front yard, not really much usable backyard. This has been positioned in a way that it really lends itself to potentially chopping off that yard or building out here. I actually didn't go inside any of this. I don't know if this was like an old shed, a chicken coop. We tried to find our way inside, and also just looking at the little alley here, making sure that the block didn't end at this being a fence. It actually ended behind it. But yeah, that is just a surprise shed. So that's our house. Almost 700 square meters in the suburb of Sunshine, was going to auction around 900, but now has an asking price of $1,120,000. 9 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, corner block, needs a ton of work, and not to mention a surprise shed at the back, which, surprise, we don't know. But let's find out about the strategy our first expert would put into place. It's time to talk with Gilbert Melgar about how he would turn this into an absolute cash machine, converting it into a rooming house. And Gilbert's done a lot of research onto this one as well. So I want to say straight up, even if rooming houses are not front and seat for you as far as the property strategy is concerned, you're going to learn so much just about researching a property, about the area, about overlays, and about actually putting together a strategy. Whether this one's right for you or not, you're going to learn a lot from this section. So right now, let's jump straight into it with Gilbert Melgar. Gilbert Melgar, how you going, man?
Hey, Todd. Thanks for having me again.
Mate, it's always a pleasure to see you. You and I got to have a catch up soon in person. It's been too long, but right now, Zoom is what we've got. And the thing that we're going to be sharing with everyone today is some amazing work you've done on Afizo for turning this house into a potential rooming house. Now, I can't wait to pull this apart because I know how much effort you've gone to with this, mate. You haven't just jumped on the call and just kind of pulled a few things apart. There's a lot to this, but is there anything you wanted to really set the stage with and talk about before we actually start opening up all the work you've done and seeing if this would actually be the best use and the most profitable use of this house?
Yeah. When you shared me the address of the house and the photo, it's completely a bit challenging, especially knowing that to find out that it's an heritage overlay zone.
Exactly. This is not for the faint-hearted as far as projects are concerned. It's potentially one of the reasons it didn't actually sell at the auction that was originally planned as well.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. Well, for every pass properties in auction, it's an opportunity for someone, right?
Exactly. And now it's also an opportunity for someone that doesn't maybe fit the auction buying criteria, because obviously 30-day settlement, cash contract, like everything's a lot stricter. But Gilbert, why don't we actually start by talking a little bit more about the rooming house strategy and what you're thinking could be a really good fit for this property?
Well, the reason why I came up with the strategy of rooming house, because the property alone already has 9 bedrooms, and the livable area is already 290 plus square meters. So it's really under 300 square meters. So right there and then, the highest best use that I can think of to generate cash flow is rooming house. Plus, not to mention, the location of the property itself is near the train station.
Yeah, because you're only, like a K&a-half down the road, kilometre down the road? It's not far at all.
No, not really. It's just less than a kilometre.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, so having 9 rooms isn't sufficient, though, to turn it into a rooming house. There's a lot more that needs to go on behind the scenes to actually make that conversion happen. Did you want to start diving into a little bit more of the detail as far as the reno costs that would be needed to bring it up to scratch, but plus all of the compliance side of things to actually make this a rooming house? Where do you want to start, mate?
I want to take one step back, because I did a research first if there's really a demand for rooming house in that area.
Love it.
So let me just, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen for a bit.
Go for it.
So looking in here, right? So we have here Sunshine. Currently, there's 60 people looking for a room to rent, and there are 6 registered rooming houses in the area.
Yep. Gotcha.
And if we overlay that with the supply and demand, so we can see here, currently, there's 60 people looking for a room to rent, and there are only 11 rooms advertised online. And if you'll see the trend over time since 2019, there always has been a gap between those two.
Interesting.
So that's what I look at it first. And I also look at, these are the rooming houses or the registered rooming houses in the area. And I've looked at the different, how are they, what do they look like? That's a property. One of them looks like this. So this was advertised. This is how it looks like. Advertised before is 265. So this is one of the rooming houses in the area. You can see here, had a good finish, high finish that I can say, right?
Yeah, that looks nice.
Yep, and the other one is this one as well. Okay? So this one is a pretty on the middle in terms of finish.
Gotcha.
So so that means there's a supply, there are good demand of rooming houses, number of people looking for a room to rent, and there's not sufficient supply of rooming houses or advertised rooms for lease in the area. And now we know as well that there are property managers that manages this kind of asset type.
I just want to double down on something that Gilbert's just pointed out here, because it's so important, because you might fall in love with the strategy. And it's like a saying that I say all the time on the show, don't fall in love with the deal because it won't love you back. Because sometimes you could see a property like Durham and go, wow, this could be the most amazing rooming house. But if you don't do what Gilbert has just done and just shown you how to do to see, is there actually a demand for it? You could just be making something that sounds really cool, but no one actually wants. So already looking at this going, okay, there's demand for it in the area. There's 11 of them and there's 60 people looking for them. This isn't something where the stats are in the other way, where there's 11 people looking and there's 60 of them. You'd be staying away. You wouldn't be touching it with a barge pole.
Yes. Plus, at least you got to make sure that there are property managers that are managing these type of assets within the area as well.
100%.
Because they are specialized on managing these type of investment properties. So now we figure out, okay, there's a good demand. There will be people managing in the area. Now let's look at the property. What can we do in the property, considering that there's an heritage overlay that we talked about. Yeah, so it's interesting. So what I did was, just like any other property investors, part of the due diligence is they have to ring the council in order to validate that. But one of the steps that I can share is not only for rooming house, is they can do this, they can validate this, especially in Victoria. So what they can do is they can go to this planningvic.gov.au/planning scheme/planning property report. This is a free tool in Victoria. All they have to do is put in the property address in here, and it will spit out property report, which is exactly like this.
Love it.
So it will surely tell you what are the zoning of the land, what are the overlays or the planning overlays that are in there. And we found out this one. So this one is on a heritage overlay. So when I found out that this has an heritage overlay, and I check what type of heritage overlay it is by checking the number. So it's HO121. So when you click the heritage overlay link here, it will redirect you to this planning schemes page right away. So you can definitely browse here. You can see here it's H0121. That's the type of overlay or heritage overlay it is. All you have to do is browse all the way down, and we'll see here, we'll look at 121, and we'll see here, this is William Mackay House. You can see there the address. Here you can see right away what controls apply, what are the things that you'll do or that will trigger a planning permit. So external paint controls apply now. It won't trigger planning permit. And also the only one that would trigger planning control permit are solar energy systems control. But fences and if you internal alterations controls apply, it won't trigger any planning permit.
So as much as there's a heritage overlay, a lot of the times, especially as property investors, we hear the word heritage and we just think you can't do anything, massive costs, but you've just looked into the detail of it and gone, yeah, there's restrictions, but it's not maybe the amount of restriction you think it is.
Yes. It's always better to dig deeper because, there are different types of overlays in terms of the heritage. Well, at first glance, we thought overlay is more general, but there are different controls underneath it, right? And on top of it, aside from doing this due diligence, of course, in order to validate what we've seen here, I ring up the council and I was able to talk to the head of the planning or heritage conservation on the town planning agent department of Brimbank. And her name was Natika Schmeder. And she confirmed to me that, based on what I want to do for a rooming house on the property, it won't trigger any planning permit.
Fantastic.
Provided that we just alter the inside of the property.
And not only that, from the conversation you and I had a couple of days ago, just before this recording, and just to timestamp this, we're doing this on the 25th of September right now, but you and I were talking about it, and you said not only did she say it wouldn't trigger a planning permit, but she was actually pretty all for it. Like they were very keen if you were actually going to go ahead with something like this.
Yes, when I mentioned to her my plan to do a rooming house and to provide an affordable and safe accommodation, she was actually supportive of it because she said, we really need that type of accommodation in the area because I myself, I know a lot of people looking for that type of safe and affordable accommodation. And in fact, she also mentioned to me, she offered that, since it's an heritage property, I'm more than happy to just let me know when you're going to the property. I'm more than happy to go with you in the property so that I can point out which part of the house should you retain within the inside, right? Because in the future, when you retain it, that will add more value to the property. And I was like, that's really nice of you. I hope all the people in the councils are like you.
Mate, you've had a really good experience with the council. Like, whilst there are ways to definitely push back when the council maybe makes things a little bit difficult, if you've got the opportunity to actually swim with the current instead of against it, that's going to make everyone's life a hell of a lot easier. So you obviously made a very good impression on her, mate, and chosen a strategy that they actually really feel is a good fit for the area because that's not a normal response.
The area probably is in need of that, right? And plus, you're not being a slumlord. What you're providing is an affordable and safe accommodation for the people in the area.
All right, so now we know there's a demand for a rooming house in the area. The council is supportive of this, but there's still a lot of work to be done because unless the numbers stack up, it's like the first few checkpoints are met. How's the rest of it looking?
Well, the rest of it are looking really, really good. I think in order for me to really get to the whole of it is I would like to share the floor plan or the proposed floor plan that we have. I'll go through it from the ground floor and then we'll go through the second floor or to the first floor next.
All right, I can see you've gone through a lot of effort with this, man. This looks really cool. Where do you want to start?
We can start by sharing the design from the before and after or the proposed. So if we can see here on the left, this is what the current layout looks like. And on the right, this is what we're thinking of what we're doing to convert the rooming house. So you can see here at the bottom, this is the ground floor. At the bottom of the photo, we have the bedroom 1 and the bedroom 2 is the adaptable unit, because to convert this into a rooming house, it has to be one of the requirements to convert this into the Class 1B building is to have adaptable or for disabled tenants, right? And we also have the bed 3 here, and then the 4 and 5 on the top. Then, of course, we have the common area, which is pretty big. It's a combination of living and dining and kitchen. So that's 35.38 square meters. And then the laundry as well.
Before we continue, mate, can you explain a little bit about what you just said then about turning it into a Class 1B and with the handicap requirements to actually meet that classification?
Yeah, because the thing is, if we're going to do a rooming house, aside from the reason why they have this is so we can accommodate every type of tenant that we can possibly have in the property. That's the reason why they have that as a requirement. Oh, and Todd, further to that, as an explanation to 1B, the 1A building are your regular dwellings or residential house, right? And then the 1B, I was referring to having an adaptable or unit together with the universal access, like for the wheelchair ramp and all, plus all the walls in between each rooms has to be fire rated. And also there has to be an interconnected or integrated alarm, smoke alarm system within the property as well. And of course, your fire rating requirements and all of those, since there will be not more than 12 people should be living in the property.
Got it. So going from 1A to 1B, you're essentially moving it from like normal house, if you will, to almost an apartment block. Not quite, but nearly there.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Okay. I have just noticed, I think on bedroom 5, they might have a hard time getting in and out, but I'm assuming that's just something the architect may have.
Yeah. There should be a door here. Yeah. And then going to the first floor, you can see here what we did is on the bottom we have the bed 8. We've even put in a walk-in robe here, and then bed 7 and bed 6, and also lounge within the area as well.
Are they bigger as well upstairs?
Yeah, they are.
They look much bigger, yeah.
Yeah. So these 3 rooms are 18.5 square meters. Right? So that doesn't include the ensuite. So that's pretty huge. Yeah.
Now, I know we're going to dive into the FISO in a second, but on that there, if like bedroom like 8 looks like it's, 18 square meters, 7 is 18 for bedroom 6, look at bedroom 5 downstairs, 20, but then in comparison to like bedroom 3 is 11 square meters or 11 and a half. You're charging different rents for these different kinds of bedrooms? Like, how does this work?
Yes, definitely it would be different for each room, and that differs on the size. So that it will be lower for bedroom 1, 3, and 4 because they're the smallest. But when I spoke to that property manager, actually I spoke to her and called her up, and she told me the property that I shown you a while ago in Duke Street, they had it rented for $350 per room. So all included. All included means including the electricity, the water, Netflix, or Wi-Fi and all. Yeah, so all bills included.
$350 per room. Okay. So we're talking some pretty serious cash flow here, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And when I showed her the layout that what we're trying to do, she told me that provided that it would be the similar or even standard finish, they can have it rented in between $340 to $360. Of course, all bills included. And I asked what's their management fee, and their management fee is 7.7%.
Pretty good for a rooming house management fee. And just for anyone that's a little bit newer at this, rooming house management fees sometimes can go all the way up to 20%. Like, they can be huge.
Yes. So that's the reason why it's important as well to give them a call, ask them what's their rate, and also their leasing fee is 1 week, and their renewal fee is 1 week as well. But
Fantastic.
All in all, I would say 7.7% is not bad.
Yeah,
really good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as far as what would it cost, before we get into the cash flow of the property, what would it actually cost to do this? Because this is a lot of work, especially what you're saying about this isn't just like a cosmetic quick reno. You're talking about actually changing like the fire rating within walls. We're talking about making it wheelchair accessible in certain elements. Like there's a lot of stuff that's being done here.
That's correct. So in order for me to get the close to accurate cost, I call up the guys from the rooming house expert. So they gave me this quote. Their conversion would involve, or estimated cost work would be a range of $290 to $350. It would be an approximate 60 days after drafting the plans and securing the building permit, followed by 2 to 3 months on site for construction.
Gotcha. So 290 to 350. So if we were to use the 350,000 as more of a worst case, and with stuff like this being done in 2 to 3 months, that's a pretty impressive turnaround timeline wise.
Yes. And I asked them to provide me a quote as well. How much would it cost if we're going to knock it down and rebuild? And they gave me a ballpark of $850,000, inclusive of demo.
And to rebuild something of the same size?
Something of the same size, and to knock down the whole house.
All right. So as far as getting this done, you're looking at basically around that 3 to 350,000 for the quote that you've got through. And as far as actually the numbers, does it stack? What is it going to be looking like as far as a val afterwards as an approximate? And what's the cash flow going to be looking like, Gilbert?
I guess the best way for me to explain that while I'm talking is I'll show it as well, right? So acquisition cost would be 1,120,000. So I put here all the assumptions in here, 30-year loan period at 6.7% interest rate, and I'm going to P&I. So, and I put here also what I did here, the conversion cost would be cash outright. So I just put here as, just ignore that fee here.
Otherwise, that's a very expensive buyer's agent.
Yeah, I just put there 350. So roughly this would be the cost that we need, or the outright cash that we would need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for the rent, so that's that 8 rooms. So I just put here 320 for each room. Looking at the numbers from the get-go, we are positive right away for both interest, if we'll do interest only or if we'll do P&I. So this is looking at P&I. On the first year, we're already positive at 13,847.
Amazing. And what kind of a vacancy and sort of outgoings is that allowing for?
So the vacancy, what I put here to be conservative, I put here 4%.
Mm-hmm.
And then projected rental increase, I put there very conservative, 2% per year. And then the inflation, I put there 3% per year as well. Council, I put there 400 per month. Water, 400 per month. Insurance, 400 per month. Property maintenance, 300 per month. Actually, I put property management here at 9%. Interest at 6.7%. I even put land tax at 5,000 per year. So I'm being conservative with all the numbers that I have in here. But still, on the first year, you'll be getting after tax at 13,847.
So as far as the cash flow side of things, this is obviously going to be the winner out of all three strategies, because having a positively geared property by about $300 a week straight off the bat right now in 2025, you're not finding that just about anywhere else. But the value side of things, what do you reckon this would actually be worth after actually dropping the 300,000 roughly into it?
Well, the thing is, it would be a lot different because this would fall, not the valuation wouldn't be the typical residential valuation, right? So the valuation would be based on the commercial side, or how the commercial properties are being revalued based on the revenue from rent that it's getting.
Fantastic.
Not from the sales from the similar properties or the houses around it.
Now, just to give you guys a very high overview of what Gilbert's talking about, again, if you're a little bit newer, normally when a valuer is valuing a residential property, they'll use comp sales or comparative sales. So they'll look for other like and like properties, what have they sold for, and they'll come to a valuation figure that way. However, what Gilbert's saying is they're actually going to value this as a commercial asset, meaning that the income the property produces is one of the primary factors that's really helping determine the valuation. Whereas normally, if you've got a house and just renting it for $1,000 a week instead of $500, what it might normally rent for, the valuer doesn't really care. In this case, they absolutely care, and it can drastically affect what it's actually worth. So with that in mind, where do you reckon this would sit after the investment?
I would reckon it would sit between 1.8 to 1.9. Yeah. And of course, every year, as the rent increases, it will also be different as well.
So in terms of equity, after all expenses, you're looking at, if I've done just quick math in my head, what, $400,000 potential equity uplift and around $14,000 positive cash flow from the very start.
Yes, that's correct. And just to add, when I play around with the numbers, this is what's making it crazy for this type of strategy. So let's say for this one, so if I'm positive already by 13,000 per year, right? So let's say if I reinvest 1,000 of that as a put in as an extra repayment on top of what I'm paying, then by 2045, I'll be already debt free for that property. What if I add more? So by then I'll be getting 84 to 90,000 after tax per year.
You're going to absolutely give Rob and Oliver a run for their money as far as cash flow is concerned, but also by the look of things, as far as the value add side's concerned. The thing that surprised me the most though was 2 to 3 month turnaround. That's insane. Like
Because
that is so much work.
Because they've been doing this in Melbourne. They have multiple projects going on in Melbourne, and they have lots of tradies on their umbrella. That's why they can do this in scale. Yeah.
Brilliant. Is there any final words of wisdom or anything else you want to add to this one, mate, before we jump into the next strategy for this house?
What will you get is really good, right? It's just that it's not for everyone. If you have money, then you can do this, right? Because the outright cost would be bigger as well. That's why not a lot of people can do this.
Yeah,
this strategy.
If you're at rental 0 or rental 1 and you're trying to get to 1 or 2, this is probably not the one that you're actually going to take on. This is something where if you're at rental 4, 5, 6 and you're really looking for that cash flow injection, you're wanting to really specialize in an area, there's merit here, man. This is going to be a really interesting one to watch. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what happens with this house, especially after this episode. But Gilbert Melgar from Suburbs Finder, thank you so much for jumping on the show, man. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I got to say, I wasn't expecting 290 to 350 to get all that work done. I was genuinely thinking it was going to at least have a 4 in front of it. And it's not so much that because like it would just cost 400,000 like to renovate, because like I said, like when walking through, this is pretty intimidating as far as the cosmetic side of things is concerned. But once you actually got a structural report on it, if everything was as intact as it felt, it's just a lot of cosmetic work. And if you actually pull the house apart into like 2 different stories, you're kind of renovating 2 normal size houses almost. It's kind of a great way to think of it, like to sort of compartmentalize it. However, with the rooming house side of things, I've never rented a rooming house. Obviously, this is where Gilbert's expertise lie, but I was always under the impression that there was so much more cost involved. And again, this is the power behind these episodes, because this hasn't just come from him like making up some numbers. This has come from him getting quotes, talking to the council, literally getting plans drawn up by an architect on how would this actually work. I'm really interested to hear it from you guys in the comments below. What do you think about the rooming house side of things? Do you think this is something that is just a bit of a flash in the pan? It's been around for 5-10 years now and it's going to start fading away? Or do you think we're maybe at the start of something huge, the start of something that could answer a lot of people's serviceability problems and help with the housing crisis? Tell me your thoughts below. But right now, we're about to talk about our second strategy with property developer and head of the property developer network, Rob Flux. Now, it's no surprise that Rob is obviously going to be developing this block, but with the heritage overlays you've just learnt about with Gilbert, it's going to be interesting to see how Rob tackles this. So right now, let's jump straight into the chat with Rob Flux. Rob Flux, how you going, man?
Mate, I'm excited, Todd.
Mate, this is going to be a really good episode. You were on the last One House 3 strategies. That one has done tremendously well. We've had so much good feedback on it. And we're back at it again, but this time with a very different kind of property. This is not the huge that you would normally see.
No, there's a lot of nuances on this one.
Absolutely. And is there anything that you wanted to kind of open up or set the stage with before we jump into all the detail? Because I know this is going to be a bit of a bigger one.
I'm just going to say, keep an open mind, folks. This could go anywhere.
Okay. You're such a sensationalist. I love it. Okay. Now, Rob, you've done a ton of research into this, and there's been some really exciting changes that you and I were chatting about off air just very recently with Victorian planning, and like really good. So where do you want to start with this? Do you want to just kind of go into high level research first and then get more detailed?
Yeah, I might do that. I might just firstly do the aerial photo. I'm going to do a screen share here. Just do an aerial photo and just see the opportunity in the backyard first. That's probably the first element. And that is clearly that there's a whopping great big block of land at the back that we have the ability to untap because we're on 2 streets. There's also a couple of other things, and we want to look at all the tiny little nuances that are actually sitting here. So one of the things that I see is the property is actually set back a long way from the front. And I also see that there's been an extension to the house at some point as well. So there's some interesting things that we're going to unpack as we go. The first one being, we could just remove that old extension and create a bigger backyard. That's a nice, easy opportunity. But then we're going to go into a couple of elements where, if I have a look at the sales photo here, we can actually see the property is on stumps. Now, the fact that it's on stumps is going to give us a whole bunch of opportunities that most people, I guess, in the southern states don't think about a hell of a lot. And this is why this one's really exciting to me. I'm from Queensland. We relocate houses all day, every day. And this one is prime for, do we we want to, I guess, potentially reposition this on the block and get a little and squeeze the lemon a little bit harder, or at minimum get underneath the house and I guess put new plumbing and all sorts of things underneath the house to I guess maybe reconfigure the internal floor plan.
Now that's sounding like it's going to be incredibly expensive. How much does it actually cost to just, because you're literally talking about moving it like what, 5 meters, 10 meters? How far?
If I come back to the original aerial, I want you to see this one next door, I guess across the road by comparison, and just give you some insights as to how far you could potentially do it. Now, the thing that might stop us is the fact that this tree is in the front yard. It's actually on our property, so we'd need to check with council to see whether or not we could either trim that or remove that. But we could slide it into the corner if we really wanted to, and that would open up this backyard significantly. Now, to do that is actually strangely not as expensive as you would think. Now, there's not a lot of house relocators in Victoria, but something like that in Queensland might cost about $40,000 to move, to actually just pick it up and move. And it's a relatively simple process. If we actually have a look at this a lot closer, we can actually see that the only thing stopping this from relocating is this little concrete pad here. Otherwise, the whole thing is able to be picked up and moved. Now, where there's potential for additional costs would be, hey, we need to relay that slab, or we need to reconnect the sewer connection, or little things like that. It's the knock-on effect of the relocation rather than the actual relocation itself.
Got it. And all of the little knock-on effects to it, like if you're talking sewer, water, like getting everything reconnected so it is a usable dwelling again, we're talking about another 20, 30,000. How much do you reckon roughly?
Yeah, in this particular instance, it's a relatively simple one. Where it can get extraordinarily expensive is if you do things like lift the house up and try to build another story underneath it, then you've got to add stairs front and rear and things like that. In this instance, I don't think we're actually going to be able to do that because it's actually been built as a 2-story in that peak of the house. I don't think we'd actually get underneath any, I guess, building height limitations by lifting it up. So there's no advantage to that. But watch for the opportunity. This is a rare one that you'll come across. But to lift this up is actually really simple. What they do is they actually get some little car bottle jacks and they actually stick them underneath the house. They just ratchet that up. And as they ratchet it up, they put a block of wood under it. And then they put the bottle jack on top of the block of the wood and they do it again until they can actually get a truck under it. Once they can get a truck under it, then they can slide it across and they do the reverse and put the stumps in place, concrete it while it's floating in the air. And so they can literally relocate this in about a day and a half. From this angle, this is where we can see this tree here. This is the one potential obstacle that might actually stop that from actually occurring. We would need council approval to either trim this back or alternatively remove that tree altogether. That's what's going to unlock this opportunity, which is going to create a bigger backyard. Now, we've already got a big backyard, but can we make bigger? That's the question.
Now, I've always been under the impression that Victoria is very protective of their trees. Is that the case? Or like, what's your experience around getting rid of trees?
That's a council by council, I guess, type approach. You'll find some councils where they've got a no tree is protected policy unless we name it. And we've got other councils that have got a every tree is protected policy and you have to apply every single time. So we're going to have to do some checks on this particular council to see what their perspective is. No matter what though, don't just remove the tree. Go to the effort of actually talking to council first or an arborist who is familiar with the area.
When you said unless we name it, I was just picturing walking up to the tree and there's like a name tag. It's like,
your name's Steve.
Yeah. This is Kevin, the tree. Can't get rid of him.
So there are particular trees in some areas that are protected because not the fact the species or anything like that, but because genuinely the person who planted the tree was famous, right? So for example, if Ned Kelly planted that tree, then that tree would be protected because Ned did that.
Wow. Did not know that. Well, obviously there is a bit more to this house than meets the eye as far as who lived there once upon a time. And I'm sure we're about to start unpacking a little bit more of the overlays shortly.
Absolutely. So we know that the potential is here now for, I guess, the 1 into 2 subdivision. So I just want to dive a little bit deeper into this element. So this is using Google Street View, Google Aerial View, but a little hidden feature that a lot of people don't realize is actually hiding in plain sight. And that is the ability for Google Earth to actually be integrated. So you can see over here that it's in 3D view. This gives me the ability to actually navigate around and look at a 3D view of how this is actually put together. So what I'm going to do is actually just pivot this around and actually have a look. And what we can see is that backyard, the second story of it has the potential for city views. So we might be able to get a really nice reverse living type scenario here and somebody have a really, I guess, a nicer lifestyle than they would have normally thought was actually possible here.
Absolutely. I've got a place nearby, and when I stood on the roof, I've got lovely city views. So you probably would get really nice views there.
Absolutely. So the impact on the price on that and that sort of thing depends on the design and those sorts of things as well. So the next thing I wanted to do is go through Google Street View again, but this time we're actually going to have a little bit of a different perspective. When I had a little bit of a walk around the property, the first thing that I noticed was there's some protective barriers that are sitting behind the main fence. So these are, I guess, your typical builder's temporary fence type arrangement. And this sign here, if I zoom in on this sign, it actually says danger, do not enter. Now, I suspect that there might be a little bit of, I guess, dilapidation in the house itself. And we probably need to make sure that the house is of a standard that is not dangerous and things like that. So we probably want to make sure that our building and pest inspection is identified properly, that the house itself is structurally sound. But from the visual inspection, this thing looks like if we gave it a nice reno, that this would come up as a beautiful specimen.
Absolutely. There's a lot of character in this. And as you saw in the video that we went through earlier as well, if, like Rob's saying, this was given a bit of love, and depending, I don't know what your budget's looking like, Rob, but it's probably going to need at least a few $100,000 thrown into it. But this wouldn't just go to looking like a respectable home. This would go to looking like something beautiful, exactly like you described.
And that heritage element to it, that heritage look and feel is going to itself probably add, I guess, some extra dollars to the sale price if you respect that and do it well. Now, as we walk around the property, this is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I wanted to call this one out. As I go this direction a little bit, Google Street View has actually captured an accident live, I guess, which is the first time I've actually seen it captured live. I've seen lots of other crazy things. And as I spin in the other direction, this taxi driver is looking quite sheepish, and I'm not sure whether or not he was actually the cause of that or not, or maybe he just witnessed that. So I don't want to put any blame. If you are this person here who's been strategically blurred out, maybe you can shed some light on the situation.
I think everyone gets blurred there. But when I very first found this property, Rob and I were actually going through it, and literally we found this in real time together. And it's the first time both of us have ever seen an accident on Google Street View. So yeah, sorry if you're the one in the accident there, not laughing at you, but that's definitely a bit of a find.
So the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to go around the corner, and rather than navigate it around here, I've actually already navigated here. This is to the rear of the property. There's actually a laneway access here. We can also see there's already a second driveway. So this would actually be unlocking this backyard, so to speak. So there's heaps of opportunity. The second driveway is already there. What we really want to see is if we can't relocate that house, is there an opportunity for us to put a driveway entrance on this street? Okay. And as I come down here, I can see this is that extension that was sitting here before, and it's conveniently located between these two mature trees. We would need to ask council for permission to remove this sapling and then get a driveway in on this access here. Now, the reason why I've said that, if I come back to this angle, this is quite a challenging situation where you've got a car that'll come around the corner and it'll be in a, I guess, blind to anyone reversing out of this property. So if we were to put a driveway in this corner, the only place it could go is here. And again, we'd need council permission in order to remove this. So we've got a little bit of due diligence that we need to do, I guess, with regards to council and specifically trees to see if we can unlock it. But the potential is here at this point.
So in terms of getting rid of the trees, it's sounding like that's going to be pretty much a pretty strong flavor with this, whether it's on the side or whether it's in the actual bounds of it. But if we're talking about the acceptance from council, is this something that's like a 50-50 shot, or is it more of a like 80% you should be fine? Like where do the odds kind of sit with this?
That's very subjective to the council and how pro-development they are and whether or not they're actually trying to meet their housing targets. Now, historically, I would have said extraordinarily difficult to actually achieve in Victoria. Because the state government has given them a whole bunch of new housing targets, then they've got to actually try and achieve that in some way, shape or form. So unless there's a legitimate reason for them to block that new dwelling going in, they might say, look, I'll let that tree go, but you must reinstate an identical tree somewhere else. The other thing that they'll do is they'll be looking at the species of the tree, the size, the maturity, and that sort of thing and go, in order to do that, if we're going to knock that down, what would it take to actually relocate that? So I'd say 50-50, council by council type perspective. But the fact that you're adding, I guess, something to their housing targets, if they're a long way behind their targets, then it's more 60-40. If they're well ahead into their targets, it's probably 40-60.
Got it. And so if someone's looking, like, let's obviously use this house as the example. If they're doing this as a DD phase, their whole FISO is basically pivoting on this tree has to be removed for me to actually do this. Is this a case of you want to get it in writing from the council? You want to get it in writing from an arborist? Like, who do you want that all clear from before you commit to that purchase?
So you would actually have a pre-application meeting with council. The terminology changes from state to state. So it's either called a pre-application meeting, a pre-lodgement meeting, or in Victoria, it's called a pre-app because they like to shorten the names. But either way, you're going to sit down with council. You're going to say, look, this is our proposed application. These are the challenges we see. Would you be generally supportive of that? And where do you see the issues that we would need to work around? You'd try and do that under a due diligence phase of your sales contract.
Beautiful. All right, man. What are we moving on to next?
Okay, the next thing that I want to look at is the actual Victoria planning portal itself. This is looking at the same property from an aerial view. I'm actually going to firstly turn off the zoning. We can actually see neighbourhood residential zone 1, but what I can see that's sitting around me, and this is the interesting part to me, is developments, and at a lot higher density than what we're actually trying to achieve. So I can see over here, much smaller lot with a shared driveway. I can see similar over here. These ones here have squeezed into 3 into the same property. So the chances of us getting a 1 into 2 across the line are relatively high, I would suggest. Then if we turn our aerial back on, there's actually a measuring tool here. And this is where I can actually click on how far from the house until the front boundary. And I can actually see that this is in the vicinity of about 8.4 meters. But if I do the same check over here, this is about here. So this is about 4 meters. So you can see we've got the opportunity to potentially bring it forward 4 meters as well if we can argue that case appropriately with council.
Got it. Okay. And then I guess it comes down to then weighing up how much it costs to move it forward versus how many extra square meters you're getting out the back and what that's worth. Is that kind of
correct. So if we can get the approval across the line as is where is, then we're not going to bother. Okay. If we need to shave the back of the house off, then we'll shave the back of the house off. Okay. And then last resort would be, hey, do we need to move the house forward? We've got 3 different ways that we can actually potentially get this across the line. So it's a kind of plan A, plan B, plan C.
All right. So moving it forward is going to be dependent essentially on if it needs to happen, but it's looking like if it does, it's got potential to happen. So either way, if it is coming forward, if it's not, what's the next step for you? You're looking at chopping off the backyard and then developing, selling the land. What are you thinking?
Well, I'd be looking at the resale value of the land in the area, which is about, in this vicinity, it's about $1,000 a square meter. And then I'd also be looking at the resale of a brand new home in the area and whether or not we can actually push the sale of that up based on the fact that we might be able to get those nice city views. So we can see sales in the area ranging for the brand new house, ranging from about $850 all the way up to 1.7. So we'd be trying to put something a little bit nicer on this particular property, try and get the views out of this one and I guess push those sales prices up.
Got it. Okay. And so you'd be looking at this from a complete, like renovate the front house, build something nicer at the back, and then a complete sell-off, or would you be retaining?
Look, for me, I tend to try and retain when the project is bigger. So if I've got a 20% profit on cost, if I'm going to just sell one of these down, then I'm retaining about an 80% residual debt on this. And so the debt ends up, because I'm trying to do many projects at a time, the debt ends up being something that holds me back. Now, as an investor, debt is good. As a developer, debt is bad. And so for this project, I would personally be selling off. But if I'm doing a 6-pack, then I'd only sell 5 of them off. That would pay my costs. Then I'd own the 6th one for free. So it's a balancing act to say, well, what is the project? Do I sell all of it off or just some of it off?
All right. So it's not a 1 into 6. So this isn't probably something that you'd be looking at keeping. This is more of a get in, get out, cash in the profit, move on to the next.
Absolutely. Now, the next thing that I need to do is actually look at the planning controls and overlays that are actually sitting on the property. So in Victoria's instance, you can do this, create a planning report. What it does is actually give you a blow by blow. What are the, I guess, the zones, the impacting overlays and those sorts of things. So it's a nice, easy document that to actually start to look at. We can see it's in neighbourhood residential zone 1. And then if I come down here, we can actually see that there's a development contribution plan in place. Now, this is saying, hey, there's a set of rules that actually define what your council contributions are actually going to be. So if I click on the schedule here, what that does is it opens up what my council contributions are going to be, and I can see what my contributions are going to be nice and clearly sitting here. So we can get our numbers very, very fast from this.
Now, just quickly, for anyone that's going, council contributions, what are they?
That is the tax for the privilege of creating new properties so that council can say that they can put new parks and schools and libraries and all that sort of thing in. It's an unfortunate part of the process where we actually just have to consider it a line item as a cost of our project.
All right, so council contributions around that sort of 14, 15 grand. Where to next?
So we're coming back down here and we can see that we've got a heritage overlay in this instance, and there's a lot of heritage in this particular area. So we're going to click on the link and actually follow that. And when I actually come here, we can actually see that we've got our individual property has been individually named on the Heritage Register. Now, because it's been named on the Heritage Register, we need to be very, very careful, make sure we actually get a heritage architect to give us an assessment on the particular property as to what we can do. But we can already see that there are some controls. Can we paint it a different color? Yes, we can. Sometimes you have to be compliant with, I guess, the colors and themes of the day. Can we do internal alterations? And then in this instance, yes, we can. So no, there's no internal restrictions. And is there a tree canopy control? And the answer is no. So the fact that there's no tree canopy control now gives me some confidence that maybe that tree inside my property might have a little bit of opportunity. Now, I've still got the street tree that might be a challenge, but this is giving me some insights to say, hey, it's worth a crack about that internal one.
Okay, so everything's really lining up so far. Is there anything that's really presented a challenge since you've been looking at this?
So the next thing that I'm going to do here, knowing that it's a heritage building and we've had the walkthrough, we understand the current condition of the property. What we haven't done is a full detailed building and pest inspection to actually understand, I guess, the structural integrity of the house. We want to make sure that that is, I guess, got really strong bones. And assuming that's the case, then this is going to come up really well with not a lot of effort.
Beautiful. All right, so the heritage overlay is not as bad as what it could be. I've just seen you click on this one. Faster approvals are the first words that's popping up. Now, I know this has been a big deal and you guys have just done a whole event on this. This is how much of a big deal it is for you guys. Can you start unpacking this for everyone that lives in Victoria, just how much this is going to change?
Firstly, what I'll say is we're in a housing crisis at the moment. We need 1.2 million homes over the next 5 years. So every state government is going through a whole bunch of planning reforms to try and make the process of getting through planning applications much, much easier. Now, we are at the 25th of September at the date of recording of this, and this piece of legislation literally came out, I guess, only a few days prior on the 18th of September. So this is brand spanking new, straight off the press. As a matter of fact, in the last 5 days, I've had 5 pieces of legislation come out all the way around the country. But this is fast approvals for a 1:2 subdivision, or if I'm building 2 homes, such as a duplex. Now, if we go and actually look at this in a little bit of detail, what it's telling us right here is that we can have a planning application in 10 business days. Okay, so that is not a huge turnaround. So our holding costs have just suddenly shrunk. And on top of that, if I come down here, so this is going through a new process called VicSmart. So long as we actually meet that, the other thing that it does is it stops people with no advertising. So you don't have to go and advertise this to your neighbors or things like that. So it stops the neighbors of actually putting complaints into council and then taking this to the Victorian Civil Arbitration Tribunal, so what they call VCAT. So it stops people, I guess, dragging on development applications for 18 months, 2 years at times. So this means 10 days in and out. Holding costs are going to be so minimal in this, it's not funny.
Now, I know if any of you guys read underneath that 10 days, it does say this saves applications from the standard statutory time frame of 60 days plus. Plus is really the key word there, because Rob and I were chatting off air just before we hit record on this. I know it says 60 days there, but how long would a normal process actually take in reality, Rob?
Victorian government's got a really good, I guess, website called Know Your Council. And so it actually gives the real world stats on every single council, how they're actually tracking against this. And not many of them are actually under that 60 days mark at this moment in time. Some of these planning reforms are trying to bring that back under control. But I guess this is a statutory time frame for them to assess it. It's not for them to approve it. And so by the time they go back and forth, I've had examples in our community, 9 months, 18 months, 2 years, and especially if there's challenges where people take you through to that VCAT tribunal process, that can drag on for a very, very long period of time. So this completely eliminates that and brings it down to just 10 business days. That is one of the most exciting things I've seen in a very long time for Victorian government.
I know this might not sound exciting to you guys if you're fresher at this, but anyone that's been in this space for a little while is probably going to share the enthusiasm that Rob has for this and that I've got for this right now, because this is a game changer. This is going to make things so much smoother. And like you were saying before, how much this is actually going to lower holding costs is going to be insane. But Rob, where do we go from here? Now that we know that this project could potentially be approved in 10 days, like a fraction of what it was beforehand, what's next?
Look, I'd be trying to get it under contract with a due diligence clause, have a pre-lodgement meeting or a pre-app meeting with council just to remove the potential roadblocks on this with regards to those trees and whether or not we can actually remove that. That's going to change where our driveway access is, and that may change, do I have to take that extension off of the house at the back and the like? Once we know that, then the 10-day approval process is fairly easy. I'd be then talking to my architect and go, can we come up with a really sexy design that's going to maximize those views, and do some really hard research on the sales prices at that point. But this is looking, can it be done? Is an absolute. I guess there should it be done? I guess that's the next phase in the due diligence.
All right. So for this house, your strategy is to renovate the front house, potentially slide it forward if needed. If not, well, then you're not going to do it. You're then going to sell off the front house. We're going to chop off the backyard, build something out the back, which is going for the highest price range possible. We're not putting like two little ones on there. You're really going for that top dollar. And this is also being sold as well. Maybe not separately at different times. This is all going to be a project that's run together. So it's all sale and then on to the next project. Is there anything that I've left out there, Rob, or anything else you want to close?
No, you've nailed it, but I'm going to throw a little cheeky twist in there.
Okay.
Just to see whether or not this can be done.
Yeah.
But with the fast track approval, if we did do the house relocation, if we got this tree removed, if we slid it, if we took this off, that creates a much bigger backyard. I would do stage 1, 10-day approval process and create the vacant backyard. Then I'd do a very, very cheeky application to council to see whether or not I can carve the new backyard into another 1:2 and potentially put a duplex on there.
I like it. Okay. Changes what you do slightly, but I can see where you're going with that. And obviously this has only been out for like 6 days or whatever it is.
So it's untested territory.
Got it.
As I said, it would be cheeky, but I guess you never know unless you ask.
Just in case, if anyone is watching this in 6-12 months time and you've actually done this, comment below. I want to hear how this has actually gone, because I can see, yeah, that's a super interesting one. But Rob Flux from Property Developer Network, thank you so much for jumping on the show, mate. As always, you're bringing attention to the finer details that can sometimes be the difference between making a profit or making a problem for yourself. And I think this episode is going to educate a lot of people, mate. So thank you again for jumping on the show.
You're good. Thanks, mate.
You know, I never would have thought to pull the house forward. And this is actually just a really interesting one, because like I've actually looked into transporting houses. It's like a strategy I learned from someone ages ago. Never done it because it's such a, like, there's a certain level of luck involved with it. But essentially you find a developer that's got a house they just want to knock down and get rid of. And you can either get it for free or for like pennies on the dollar. And then you pick it up and find a really cost-effective piece of land somewhere, usually semi-rural. You don't want to go full rural, but somewhere that the council's like, yeah, cool, happy. Like just, we need houses, and you can move it. And we actually did this as an episode. If you rewind back on iTunes or Spotify all the way to like, I think it's like episode 10 or something, this guy named Gordon, I want to say Gordon Sanderson. I'm sorry, Gordon, if you're listening, I may have butchered your name, but he did it. I can't remember what the profit was, but I think he made like 100 grand or something. It was decent money out of it. And this is like 5-6 years ago, whenever the podcast started. And I've heard of that kind of transporting, but I've never thought to just like move a house like forward, like 4 or 5 meters, just enough to go, okay, well, the dirt out the back is potentially worth more. And if this is going to cost us 40, 50, 60 grand to move, but we're potentially going to add another $150,000 worth of value out the back, then let's shift this over. And again, this isn't about saying that that's the right choice, that's the wrong choice. The whole point of this episode is not to convince you of a strategy. It's to open up your minds to actually think about what is possible. When you're looking at a property, not just going, okay, well, I could do that. What else could you do? Is whatever the first thing that came to mind going to be the highest and best use of the property? Maybe, but maybe not. And maybe you chop off the backyard the way that Rob has, and you're talking about building like one nice, beautiful house out there. Or maybe if you could get it past council, maybe you would be better off going down and actually building 2 smaller 3-bedders. But it's about assessing it. This isn't about falling in love with the deal because it'll never love you back. This is about finding out what do the numbers tell us to do? What are the restrictions that the property presents actually tell us that we should or shouldn't be doing? And what does the market really want? Which, speaking of which, let's see our third and final strategy from Oliver Cheung, who's going to be taking this home and restoring it to its former glory. Ollie and I actually chatted a little bit off air about this prior to the recording, and I was actually surprised just how much of a market there was for really swinging for the fence that top end in Sunshine as well, and bringing this kind of old, beautiful character back to life. Personally, this is actually what I love. Bianca and I live in a character home. We love this. But sometimes the love actually takes over and the investment side of things doesn't actually really work. But in this section with Oliver Cheung, he's going to open up the numbers on how that kind of strategy could actually be applied to 150 Durham Road. Let's jump straight into the call now with Oliver Cheung. Oliver Cheung, how you going, man?
Fantastic. How are you?
Mate, very good. I know there's going to be a lot of people looking forward to you cracking out the yellow trace again, seeing a few of the design options with this property, because you're not looking at this just through the standard kind of reno investor lens. From what I understand, you're about to take this to its most beautiful state again as an appealing owner-occupier, and to see if that's actually going to be financially viable or profitable realistically. So, mate, is there anything you want to quickly set the stage with before we jump into a few of your steps, the yellow trace, the comps, everything you've got prepped?
I think there's a common mistake of what I see a lot of investors do is they dive deep into the equivalent of a yellow trace and get dirty with trying to see what it could become. This is the last piece of information. You've got to start with understanding your marketplace, going through the due diligence as the 6-part step to then actually validate if this is making sense.
All right, Ollie, why don't we jump into these 6 steps and then start unpacking a few of the comp sales and going through the design, like what you would actually do with this property as a strategy to maximize the return. What's step number 1, mate?
Yep. Step number 1 is due diligence at a planning level, understanding the constraints within the heritage overlay. Typically under heritage overlay, it's the outside that gets protected, but equally there are restrictions where internally there are control points. I guess with this one, we're very much lucky internal control points are non-existent, which then opens up opportunities to go in with the yellow trace, pen and paper, design team, and manufacture a product that is equivalent to 2026 market demand.
Love it. So opportunities are bigger because our restrictions are smaller, essentially.
Absolutely. If this had restricted on the internal, I would absolutely not even look at it and progress this further into part 2, which is a comparable past sales.
Awesome, man. Well, why don't we jump into a few of these comps? Do they stack? What kind of dollars are we talking?
So with these comps, because again, we are in the top end of the market, right? We are seeing comparables go from anywhere of 1.7 to 1.8 across 2021, all the way up to May 2025. And let me now take you through a couple of comparables. We've got 9 Cornwall Road, 4x3x2, sold back in 2023 at a walking price of 1.8. What we're looking at is the internal look and feel, right? So that's what our focal point is, looking at finishes, full height tiding. We're looking at internal appeal again, vaulted ceiling, skylight going in, again, following a very similar profile of what the property could be as a starting point. We then move to a second comparable where we now look at 21 Hampshire Road, again 4x3x4, sold back in November of 2021 at 1.755. What our focal point is understanding the quality of finish level, and that is what the focus is by looking at these comparables. So what we're looking at, the next comparable, Todd, is 10 Centre Street Sunshine, 1.7. A lot more closer in May of 2025, time frame wise. What we're quite interested in here in this particular comparable, Todd, is looking at layout. It has an upper level to it, but at the same time too, in terms of finishes, again, I would say this one, not as the top end mark, probably a medium to high quality, as you can tell. Joinery is very basic. Your tile selection is very basic too in this particular bathroom.
Looks like that bathroom pretty nice. I see what you mean. So it's like it's done nice, but it's not exactly a high-end recent reno. There we've got like more
Correct.
of a traditional sort of bathroom there that looks like it's more keeping in character with the home, and then a bit of a newer modern one. We got some old wallpaper. Wow, then we're going super modern again here. This feels like it's almost someone that's lived there for a while and kind of renovated rooms as they've kind of like gone along just through the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very patchy. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? In terms of renovation, it doesn't tie in cohesively as opposed to the past two others.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the past two other properties in terms of comparables date back to 2021, date back to 2023.
Mm-hmm.
But the key takeaway here is being able to reach out to these selling agents, have a conversation with them, and really approach it in the light that if these properties were to come back to market in 2026 and beyond, where would the value lie in terms of pricing effect?
I just want to reiterate what Oliver's saying there, because actually making the effort to call the agents, because like Ollie's just shown us 3 comp sales, and I'm guessing you didn't go back to 21 because you thought, oh, that's a good idea, let's just go back 4 years. He's gone back that far because there's hardly any comps for a property like this. So by actually putting in that effort and talking to the agents, they're either going to tell you like, yeah, that was the worst sale of my life, it was really hard, whatever it was, or maybe they're going to tell you, actually, yeah, I was getting people asking for this kind of stock all the time and it's never around. It's a little bit of a, you're not going to know unless you actually put in the effort to ask. But mate, once you've done that, you've assessed your comps, it looks like they're sitting at 1.7, 1.8. What's the next step on the list you're taking out of your 6?
So part 3 is then understanding local owner-occupier demand in that higher end niche of the market. So what we're looking for of collaboration with local real estate is gold. We want to understand size of rooms. We want to understand, do they preface an office, a study, 2 living, 3 living spaces? Mm-hmm. We want to understand outdoor al fresco area. Do we look at options of a pool? Do we look at a butler's pantry? So all of this then ties into coming as an output into a design brief. And the reason why it's important to do that is every design decision needs to be able to respond to a local market demand.
And just for anyone that's a little bit fresher at this, can you give me a very quick overview? Why? Why is that so important?
Because we are such in a niche of the market on the high end premium where you do not want to be over capitalizing off a basis of a Pinterest board or off a basis of a renovation show that does not appeal to the local owner of demand of Sunshine.
It is very easy to gloss over what Oliver just said and not see the value in it. But if you're looking at doing a high-end reno, rewind, watch that part again, because understanding that correctly can sometimes be the difference between, yay, we did this, and oh my God, what have we done? Like understanding that demographic and spending in the right spot, incredibly important. I think that's so good to highlight. Ollie, what is step number 4, mate? What are we moving on to after we've understood that?
So once we've understood that, once we've validated that this high-end market, this owner-occupier is there, once we've spoken to a couple of agents, this then gives us the confidence of the time, the effort, the capital outlay has a return. And this is where part 4 is identifying the investment time frame and the return of investment of how this asset, how this project fits into your investment property portfolio.
Got it. Okay, so for you, I mean, the title of the episode, this is One House, 3 Strategies. How would this fit into yours? Because I'm assuming you're not keeping this in a portfolio. This would yield like 2%. Unless you're doing what Gilbert's doing and you're chopping up every room, this is not a high yielder. So are you looking at this through the lens of a flip?
I am looking at it through the lens of a flip. And the reason why is we are going with a substantial renovation. We are going through a high-end renovation. And we all know once the furniture is in, once a coat of paint is in any renovation, the asset is typically at its most pinnacle presentable stage. And this is where you want to be able to capitalize on that market. So in the context of investment timeframe horizon and return on investment, this is where it's leading a lot more towards a flip for me.
Beautiful. All right. So to recap so far, you're doing your DD planning, finding out what your restrictions are. This This one, really good for heritage. You're checking out your comps, 1.8, 1.7, 1.7. So like we're talking higher ones. And some of those were literally like 4 years ago. We're looking at what do the locals really want. We're talking to agents, really getting that on the ground understanding. You're looking at your time frame. This is probably going to be what, 18-month, 2-year project, 1-year project? What are you thinking?
I would say for the purpose of running your numbers, always allow for the latter of. So I would go for 24-month project time frame.
24 months. Okay. 2 steps left. What's step number 5?
Step number 5 is this is a type of project where you cannot deliver it by yourself. It's about building the right team that specializes, that has experience in dealing with this type of heritage listed renovations. So what it means by is picking up the right designer, potentially the right architect who has operated in that space, picking up the right town planner that is very much ingrained in dealing with heritage matters. Also picking the right builder and the right trades which specialize in your high set cornices, which specializes in high plaster work. Last but not least, 2 key elements there, structural engineer and building surveyor. And our golden team member is your local agent, who will be your partner in crime to validate every design decision, whether or not this has a market demand.
That is so important what Ollie's saying here as well, because again, this is coming back to your step number 3, really understanding what locals want. Speaking to an agent that sells this kind of product, well, as we know, there's only 3 comp sales, so as close to this kind of product as possible. They're going to be the ones that they've got their ear to the ground. They're literally talking to buyers every day. So if you're pulling out as much of that information as possible, it's only going to help you make a better product that's going to suit the market. And you also point on an interesting one as well with the team. And obviously you don't want a standard plasterer because this isn't standard plaster that's on the walls. There's a lot of things that are non-standard. Are you setting up this team like being specialty trades before you purchase, after you purchase? When are you doing that?
Look, I think it's being conscious that these are the type of trades, this is the type of team that you've got to be able to bring together. Again, it's one where you would start having conversations towards the back end of an offer looking favorable in your context. Also, in terms of time frame, it is one that is going to take a little bit more time than your standard bread and butter reno. The high set cornices, the higher ceiling, potentially internal scaffold to get access across. So all of these are considerations that needs to come into running your numbers and feasibility. But also a little bit of a golden nugget here, Todd. Your selling agent or your real estate agent isn't just for selling. They are your buyer. They are your design collaborator who is going to ensure that every design decision is what buyers want, so that it eliminates the need of overcapitalizing.
Any quick tips on actually finding an agent that's not just, because talking about them being the buyer, that's not just buying the listing? What are you really looking for to go, nah, you actually know your stuff, I'm going to go with you?
Look, a couple of things is understanding what type of product they sell, at what price they sell, really having a chat to the agent and seeing if they want to be part of a journey from day dot, because let's face it, it is a journey of a 2-year journey till they can actually have a product to then sell. Some agents would not want to be part of this journey, especially the transactional agents. So it comes down to finding the right appeal, who will give you the right information to go on what a 2-year journey.
If you're going to try and show commitment to an agent, I mean, this being in Victoria, a sales agency agreement is 60 days. In South Australia, it's 90 days. This is a 2-year project. You actually can't give them really 2 years of commitment the same way. I mean, it is possible with certain agreements, but really, like Oliver's saying, you're going to find someone that wants to be a part of this as well, that actually really knows their stuff. Like not just any agent, because you're talking high end. But mate, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about with the first 5 steps before we start breaking out all of the planning? Like, what are you actually doing with this place?
I think that, Todd, that covers high level of the key 5 steps. Part 6 is you've got under contract, you're successful, you're slowly bringing your design team via that low time between signing contract to settlement time frame. And the key to this is at the bare minimum, getting that local agent on board, getting a designer and architect that specializes in that type of project, and really a structural engineer. Right? 3 critical key members I would get from day dot. Second step is go and inspect the property with the 3 key members. Understand your constraints, and number 1 would be I would get your structural engineer to literally inspect every single wall and identify your load-bearing walls and your non-load-bearing walls. This information then feeds into possibility, into constraints, any load-bearing walls that needs to be deleted, how we're then going to bring beams in, potentially any upsizing of footings might be required. So these are all information that then gets fed back into your design team to allow that design work to happen.
Beautiful. All right, so you're actually physically going there with all of the team. Like, this isn't just a sending photos. You're making a meeting with your designer, your local agent, and your structural engineer on the day.
Yeah, in architecture and design lingo, we call that a site visit to really understand what the house appeal is. Again, this is one that has higher ceilings too, Todd. It has a couple of circular halls on that mid-level, which no one can kind of figure out what's happening there. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to be there to experience that space of what it can become.
Love it, man. All right, so you've got your reports back from your structural engineer. Let's say they've told you this is load bearing, that's not, this is, that's not. Your designer's starting to go, okay, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm seeing. Your agent's going, that's going to work, buyers are going to love that. That maybe leave off the list. You're just going to be spending money for the sake of it. No one cares. So what's next, Oliver? After you've understood where the windows are, natural light, you're putting the bathrooms pretty much on top of each other to save that we're not running plumbing all around the house the same way. What's next?
So what I'd like to do now is start blocking spaces out, right? And the reason why we're doing that is marking the footprint of where your kitchen's going to go, where your living space is going to go, where your bedrooms are going to go as a starting point. And again, for the context of what we're doing here, Todd, there's a lot more work that goes behind the scenes, but as a bit of a show and tell, this is the process of what typically happens. Okay. And there is a fair bit of iterations to get it to a point where it's presentable. This is first cut iteration.
Yeah, you're not doing this on the first pass, are you?
Absolutely not, because we're trying to get the best layout, and that's where input from real estate agent comes. That's where the architect comes in. So it's really about bringing that team with feedback to start refining as we go.
Beautiful. All right, man. What's next?
So what's next is what I'm liking predominantly about this layout is we've got this existing window here already. See, is what I really want to be doing is this space in itself is looking very promising for me to be running a kitchen in that space. So think of what we're going to try and maximize is a back wall as a long kitchen space with obviously the window allowing that external internal view across, right? So that becomes the footprint for the kitchen. Equally, what I'm liking here too, Todd, is what you might see is we've got 2 large bay windows, which gives us an opportunity. There is already an opening here to replace these windows with large bifold doors. And the reason why I say that is, let's look at one of the positives. We are north facing in this instance. So that means we're getting this nice northern light, really bring light into that space. So by default of maximizing an existing opening and again capitalizing on that north orientation across, we then want to make sure it's a living space where it's fluid enough to be an informal kitchen space, an informal dining space, right? And the heart of the home.
Got it.
What I would like...
So can I just quickly jump in on something? Because north facing, south, like it's something that sometimes as property investors, we're like, don't worry about that. Like a property will still go up in value. Oliver's not talking about a standard property investment. You are talking about appealing to that high-end owner-occ as well. So leaning into aspects like it actually being north facing for someone that's about to walk in the door and hopefully fall in love with it and then start paying fall in love dollars is actually going to be something that's worth focusing on as an investor.
Yeah. And also there is a massive difference in the context of Melbourne where you can get very much overcast in winter of walking into a south facing living area versus a north facing living area. Also in this context, we're wanting to be able to maximize what we have out here, being that this can become a nice open external deck, al fresco living out there. So that's the reason why we're opening up existing windows to bifold doors to allow that open internal living space.
Beautiful. Love it, man.
And also by doing that, that's where we are, regardless of load bearing walls or not, well, put the process here, that's where we're making the structural engineer work hard. I want you to free up that space to give us that large open space. And also in the context of to keep that heritage face into it, there will most likely be introductions of beams in there to support the upper level. That's where you can start introducing these coffered ceilings in, given that we've got height in there. So the reason why we want to be opening this is we want to have that connectivity of a large living, dining, informal area across here in that big, large green space. So again, you can see what I'm doing here, Todd. I'm blocking space, right, as a starting point before we start putting function in. Again, the other two walls down on the lower end, this room in itself, we want to showcase that fireplace. We want to bring that fireplace back to glory. And that's where this becomes a more formal living space. And the two rooms back here, initial room across in this instance, that's where we are leading it to a more formal study office space. And what we've done in this instance, in this lower back room, this is definitely an opportunity for a lower ground master bedroom, which then ties in with an ensuite across here.
Is your design making a real statement of the ensuite, of like the walk-in room? Like, are you going all out to really, again, pull on those emotional heartstrings?
Absolutely, Todd. That's where we've got a large internal room with the walls already there, a 4.2 by 5.6 master bedroom, right? Which then ties into the ensuite, large bath in there, really being that masterpiece at the ground level.
Beautiful. Maybe this comes into more the functionality aspect that you're about to move into, but are you sort of specifically designing like wows, like real kind of like, this is a thing, like statement pieces?
I think that's where the element of you want to create moments, you want to use the existing glory of that internal heritage feature. A lot of part of it is within that green space or that blocking space, we're going to introduce these coffered ceilings in. Within that existing fireplace, you're going to repolish that marble, you're going to bring it back to life. So each room has a statement piece where you're bringing that, I guess, higher end premium look back into the home.
So before we move on to the upper level, what else are we rounding this out with?
I think that's what we're rounding out as round one of really blocking these spaces out to then start seeing look and feel, circulation space, how the new spaces, the kitchen, the living, the master bedroom, that second form of living is slowly coming to place. And then let's not forget, this place has an upper level, right? So the upper level is one where we are looking and maximizing the use of, we know the bathroom's going to come across here on the upper level. We're then looking at a very similar approach where the initial bedroom is a 5 by 3.6. So that in itself can become one of the larger bedrooms upstairs, right? And then we're looking at the introduction of just revisiting the existing space to two smaller, potentially three smaller bedrooms to bring you to that additional uplift of that fifth bedroom. And also let's remember the additional second informal rumpus room upstairs is one that's quite important to bring back into the piece. So upstairs is a quite straightforward design element piece. We're bringing a bit more so, you know, the kids living, potentially a second study up on the upper level.
All right, so upper level, we're doing a bit of a split, so we're making some more bedrooms. You've still got a rumpus space up there, and we've got a bathroom up there as well. This is all looking like this is going to be a pretty grand house, mate. Like, and again, I feel like I have to keep reiterating this. This is not your standard property investment. This is flipping for that emotional purchase to be able to maximize that value. Which, speaking of, can we start talking a little bit about costs, potential profit, all of the numbers side of things? Or am I jumping the gun? Is there still a bit more design to go through?
No, look, I think, Todd, from a design perspective, this is one where the first design that gets put pen to paper is one that is going to go through an iteration of design booths, right? What I've showcased here is a starting position that anyone could be looking at doing, right? Whether you've got a design skill set or whatnot, it's about opening up and marking where your kitchens, where your bathroom, where your living spaces can potentially go.
Gotcha.
So that's step one, to make sure that this sets the footprint for the next move of how we're going to start designing these spaces as a starting point. The second part, going going back to numbers to round this conversation off, Todd, is as you can see, we're not putting a vanilla bread and butter flip through. We are targeting that higher end premium in alignment with our comparables. And that's where, from a renovation perspective, we are going to be on the high end of a renovation cost.
And so when you say a higher number, what are we talking? Like, this is obviously in the hundreds of thousands, but how many hundreds of thousands? I'm curious. What do you reckon?
Yeah, so in this instance, we are budgeting on the upper end for your 25 to 30Ks per bathroom. We are budgeting your higher end kitchen and your higher end appliances. So we've got to make sure that we're factoring these allowances in. So as a general rule of thumb, your bathroom, I've got an allowance of 30K per bathroom. Again, there's a couple of pipe works, there's a lot more that needs to happen in there. Your kitchen, we're going on the higher end of kitchen because obviously we are going for more high-spec kitchen, high-spec appliances. So there's a healthy allowance of anywhere from 30 to potential 40K in terms of a fully functional kitchen. Reason saying that, most likely you'll be having double ovens, you'll be having your larger cooktops, right, for that higher up spec. Again, that needs to be validated in conjunction with your real estate agent. So all up circa, we're working with a budget of about 300K renovation, noting that there are specialised trades that are going to be in there as a ballpark figure.
Got it. Okay. So you're looking around 300,000. Buy price right now, as far as their asking price, is 1.12. So you look at, let's just call it 1.1 for easier numbers. The 300,000, so up to 1.4. Plus you got a few, obviously your closing costs, holding costs, but you're looking at a potential sale there just from the comps that are available, some from years ago, of 1.7 to 1.8. And this isn't factoring in any kind of market movement. So as far as your strategy is concerned, what do your numbers say that you'd potentially be left with?
Well, if we run quick numbers, Todd, if even we're looking at a purchase price of 1.2, we're looking at over a construction price of 300, that gives us a round figure of 1.5. Napkin figures, if we're working conservatively, not putting holding costs and so forth in there, we're working at a on-sale price of 1.8 in current market. Simple maths, right? We're looking at that 300K round figure number. We are, in terms of project timeline, we know this is going to take a 2-year time frame. So we are projecting ourselves into the back end of 2027, potentially early start of 2028. I know we haven't been too specific in terms of holding costs, interest rates and so forth, but you can see how from a...
You'd be looking at what, 80 grand, you reckon, for holding?
Let's run it up to 100K. Yeah. Rough or minus, thereabouts there. So yeah, the numbers are still
pretty healthy. You're still above 10%. Otherwise, if you could actually set more of a record and push it past and actually get into the 1.9s, you're still looking more around that 20%. But obviously, this is one of the biggest things that some people will get wrong, as they'll start doing their fees. And you must see this all the time, Ollie. And go, well, but what if we could get more? It's like, yeah, but what if the agent says you can get more? What do the comps say you can get more? Because setting a record is amazing, but setting a record is very risky because then there's no proof of concept.
Yeah, and I think, and you can see how we're benchmarking it on 1.8 in today's current market. That would only hopefully improve over time in the next 2 years in terms of how the Melbourne market's going. You are de-risking of overcapitalizing by bringing that local agent partner in line. So all of these little nuances of market research is de-risking the project. And again, I think as a bit of a commentary in terms of numbers, we've run pretty much yellow trace high level numbers. And that's often how you want to be able to run these high level numbers before going into the ins and outs of whether or not this deal is going to be worth your time, worth your risk profile, and obviously worth the headaches that this is going to bring along. It's not going to be one where it's going to be smooth sailing.
No, this is not your standard renovation. But if you do it right, there is potentially some pretty serious money to be made. But mate, I know that I've already made you stay back way later. Thank you so much for your patience, Ollie, because I know there's a meeting that you've got to get to. You've gone through and providing some amazing insights. I love the plans that you've cracked out the yellow trace again, and I really enjoy always pulling one of these apart with you, mate. So Oliver Cheung from Insitu, thank you so much again for jumping on the show, mate.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for having me, Todd.
In one of our renovation videos that we did, someone in the comments actually gave us shit for, for not restoring the old character homes. And it was like, it's not a character home that we're renovating. But that kind of comment against a property like this, I can understand. So if you really are a purist, if this is the kind of thing that you really love, get involved with this. I think this house might even still be for sale. Buy the house. Because working through the numbers here and what we're saying with Oliver, this wouldn't just be a passion project. This could actually be something that could be profitable. And depending on the kind of money you're trying to make, really profitable. And this does also come back to what you're actually trying to achieve. Is it a flip? Are you actually just going for some cash to maybe build up some equity to keep growing the portfolio? Or is it something that you're actually going for the cash flow? If that's the case, then what Gilbert's talking about, there's equity uplift involved, plus the cash flow is nuts. It's insane. However, there's a lot of management. It's not your standard kind of property investment. Or maybe you're after something a little bit more like what Rob's doing, potentially chopping off the back, building one, keeping one, growing the portfolio that way. Or potentially, maybe you liked bringing this old piece of history back to life. Because another thought on this is it can sometimes be a PPR that maybe you move into, fix it up over the course of however many years, especially if you've got a trade behind you, you're a little bit handy. You could save a ton on the renovation and make yourself an insanely cool home that you've then built up a whole lot of equity that you can tap into, pull out, and start or continue building the portfolio. Or maybe it's a blend. Maybe you want to take a little bit of what Rob's doing, chopping off the backyard. Maybe you then want to take a little bit of what Gilbert's doing and go down the rooming house. The whole point of this, like it's strategy stacking. It's not always about one size fits all. Keen to hear who you guys think had the best strategy or the strategy that you think is the best fit for you. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. We want to make more of these. Actually, the big thing, comment below, where do you want to see the next one of these made? B and I are doing a ton of travel for the show. Make a few suggestions down below. Is there a type of property and is there a location that you want us to do a one house, 3 strategies on? I'd love to hear it.